Yep. Yep.
All right. So Doug and Derek, thank you very much. I've been part of this big data meetup, and believe me, I'm a physician, so have been part of this, and I've learned a lot from the group and their presentations over time period. And a lot of this stuff is really very technical and sometimes goes over my head. But trust me, I have learned a lot from being part of this group. I'm really appreciative of all the work that everybody puts on over. It actually helps us a lot. And I'm going to talk about this current state of AI in healthcare and our perspective, that is BrainX. And BrainX is essentially now a separate entity from Cleveland Clinic. We are a group of physicians who are very much interested in application of artificial intelligence in healthcare because there is a big need. The other big need that I'm going to define through my talk over here is that we need your help because we can't do this alone. I'm going to build this case through this talk. And as you know, in the current state of healthcare, we are dealing with this coronavirus COVID crisis. And this is a representation of how the cases are developing and evolving over the world. All these red areas represent the number of cases. And if you want to go to the web page, the Johns Hopkins University has an awesome web page collecting the data and showing the representation in many different visualization sets, and it's like really helpful. But this is what we are currently dealing with, and it's not easy for physicians or clinicians to understand the data behind this. Sometimes collect the data, clean it up, and put beautiful visualizations like this. So that's where we need your help. And again, it shows it's not just the visual representation, which is very powerful, but also the numerical representation. It's a lot of data representing total number of deaths, number of cases by region, and other things. And how do we analyze something like this is sometimes not the easiest thing for us to do. And if you actually want to play with the data set, the same data set that is powering the Johns Hopkins University is available on Kaggle, which probably all of you are very familiar with. And you can go and see what you can do with that data. They have put that out there so that people can work on it and come up with like creative solutions. And that's what I did. I wanted to see, what does this data set look like and what does it represent? And what you'll find is that, yes, it has a lot of areas of representation, different countries, different areas, but it's not that dense. The data itself is not that dense. It's got the age, the location, gender, and a couple of other things, the start date, and when the source was identified. But that's pretty much it. It has a lot of missing data in this data set. There's not much you can do with this except for create certain visuals and maybe do some predictions based on this data. And this problem is not different from the problem that we face in healthcare. We have a lot of data which is collected but not collected the right way. It's not easy to collect it, and it doesn't get represented the right way. So here is another data set that I've been working on, which is for the ICU patients. And as you can see on the right side, there are like all these missing values, all these missing data that is there. So all the people who are trying to generate, all these predictive algorithms, and I think this is a word of caution, a lot of imputation going on with the data, a lot of data that is missing. It's just hard for us to sometimes work with. And that's the starting point. Like, you have to have good data to do anything with that. And by the way, this is a very powerful data set that is being represented over here. It covers some around like 200 different hospitals, covers more than 200,000 patient encounters. So it's what we consider a big data set. Maybe Google and others may not consider this a big data set. And when you look at the representation of data at baseline, this is what it looks like. This is what our electronic health record looks like. And you can see that there is a lot of unstructured data over here. It's essentially a lot of free texting. There are a lot of numerical values. There are lab values and X-ray reports that are there, but it's a lot of unstructured data that we have to deal with. And this has also been an evolution. This is a paper that came out from our friends at Google, and there has been some work done to tie all this data and make it interoperable so that the way that one hospital does it, another hospital does it the same way, and you can make sense of these data sets across different hospitals. But that also has been a challenge for us and has been in evolution. And this particular picture actually frames it. May 2011 is how the US was on its EHR structure. You can see, like, some limited places. Cleveland Clinic was actually one of the first places to go on Epic, its EHR. And since then, to December 2013, it's evolved, and a lot of places have adopted EHR. Again, since then, a lot more have evolved and gone on to EHR. But each single red dot represents a silo in itself. And each single red dot probably represents multiple silos within that silo. So all this data is spread all over the place, and that's why the missing data or the unstructured issues with the data, and there are very few health systems which have the bandwidth to put all this together and do it the right way. So we created a team over here, Dr. Papay, who's going to speak after me. He's the chairman for Dermatology and Plastic Surgery Institute, a prolific innovator, and somebody who I've learned a lot from. We got together, we put a team together called BrainX, which is like, we all have the brains, but we need to leverage machine learning or AI in this to make the most out of it, hence the X over there for exponential. To solve these challenges in healthcare that we're dealing with, all these problems we're dealing with, this data and other issues. And as you can see, it's not just us. There are a lot of people who are working on this. So there has been like expanding amount of research for application of machine learning and AI in healthcare. It's just been explosive. A lot of predictive analytic algorithms that are coming out over the last few years. But the other thing that we recognized early on was that we have to surround ourselves with smart people. And hence, I came to this big data meet, people like Doug, people like Derek, people like Steve and all. We learn from everyone. And I think surrounding ourselves with smart people is a way for us to work together and learn more and realize that there might be solutions that we're not thinking of, but we need to consider, and we need your help to get engaged in this and find solutions for our patients and ourselves. And hence we formed this group called BrainX Community, which is essentially machine learning in healthcare for good. And with this, we want to provide all possible resources for machine learning in healthcare. Everything on this webpage is freely available, and few different areas that I can talk about there. And one of the things that we published last year on the webpage itself, it's readily available in the Learn section, is a machine learning in healthcare review. So we looked at the length and breadth of all the publication and put together this review so that people don't have to search for all the research that has been done and can focus on what they need and get to that really quickly. I'll show you some of the work that is out there. So these are the different healthcare specialties that have done a lot of work in there in a descending order. Cancer and X-rays and CT scans or radiology has been at the forefront. So has been dermatology out there. And the surgery ICUs, because of the richness of data, is at the forefront too. And again, gene and drug discovery are catching up, but they are really exploding these days. And if you dig deeper into this, I'm not going to go through all these different studies, but you can see what lung cancer represents or what radiology represents, essentially a lot of work going on in these areas. And from the point of view of like imaging, this has been of interest to a lot of information technology firms like Google and Microsoft, because it's very rich data, fits into various neural networks that they can use. And people have been doing great work in this area. Critical care, it's ICU where I work, and there is a lot of work going on over there. Dr. Kamal Maheshwari, he's an anesthesiologist, he's one of our BrainX members. He's going to talk about blood pressure changes and hypotension and how we are working on AI in that area. And then, of course, EKG, you have seen the cardiovascular ones. It's there on the Apple Watch, atrial fibrillation. That is an irregular heart rhythm that is being captured through Apple Watch and various other devices now. So this is actually coming to consumers, is readily available and being deployed out there in real life. There is this section on BrainX community, which is Learn. It's got a lot of curated articles from the medical literature. So if you are interested and you want to know, yeah, I'm interested in cancer research and I'm interested in knowing what's going on over there, we put all the curated articles over there. Or if you're interested in cardiology or other areas, you can go and peek over there and see what's going on. A list of curated and annotated articles over there. We have a very active group called the BrainX community on LinkedIn. Currently 1,600 plus members. We share a lot of articles, and your help over there will be really helpful. Some of the work that we did with a spinoff from Carnegie Mellon called Petrium, trying to analyze the EHR data and making a diagnostic prediction. So complex convolution neural network architecture, ultimately resulting in ensemble to make a diagnosis prediction. And a pretty good accuracy from AUC point of view. F1 scores across the area were still challenging sometimes. Something that Dr. Jacek Cywinski, he's the quality officer for general anesthesia and anesthesiologist, is going to talk about this. Impacting quality, how do we improve quality of care and measure that? So I'm going to defer that to him to talk about here. Again, as I said, Dr. Maheshwari is going to talk about the hypotension or the blood pressure changes. Something that we have been doing also is using natural language processing to measure patient experience. We're going to publish this data soon, but this is the work that our team is doing ourselves and working on that. So where do we see it in the current state? I think we are more closer to the Lunar mission, in my opinion, where we have some concepts, we have done some R&D, validation is still weak. We are working on implementation, maintenance, scalability, and generalizability are big challenges for us. And if you see, these have come to real life. These are the FDA approvals for AI algorithms. So these have come to real life by doing all this. So we have been kind of going to moon, but where we need to go is really to Mars. And I think that is going to require a completely different approach. I think there needs to be a big change in IT infrastructure. All the things that Steve was talking about, that just sounds a lot different from how we have been doing things. And that's what we need in changing our IT infrastructure. We need to think about the future concepts. We have done a lot of supervised learning concepts and some unsupervised learning concepts, but I think the newer and evolving tools that are available for us, like reinforcement learning, or maybe even other more recent advances, are what need to be applied to make sense of our data over there. And I think we need to move from sick care to healthcare. Sick care is essentially what people get in hospital, but how do you prevent people from coming to hospital? And that's where a lot of work is going, where you can put in these devices, use the data that you collect directly from humans so that you can prevent them from getting sick and getting to hospital. Primarily, all we are using is the electronic health record data mostly, which is sick care, and we need to change to healthcare. A lot of hype, especially in our area in healthcare, but I also feel there is a lot of hope, and I think this is the opportunity. There is this question whether we should try to do it ourselves. A lot of people believe that doctors can be trained to do machine learning and AI and all the data analysis. Our approach has been collaboration. We have been collaborating with various groups to work on our solutions. And we have to bring AI to reality and implement it. It requires certain principles that we need to follow, which are outlined over here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but of course, one of the first one is, it's about patience for us. And we can't allow any of this to do any harm. As I said, a lot of people believe in this Rambo approach. Oh, I can do it ourselves. There are some machine learning groups. Sometimes they feel, oh, we can develop the solutions that doctors don't know about. And this is the picture of one of my colleagues here at Cleveland Clinic. Anytime, a lot of people in Cleveland Clinic want an AI solution. He is a very smart guy, very well trained. Dr. Gaith Haboob, he's a brain surgeon in reality. And they call him in and they say, hey, can you try to fix it? I feel that's a Rambo approach, whereas I think we need more of a collaborative approach where we need your help and we need clinicians coming together. And here is an example. That's what happens when you bring in supercomputers, smart people like you working with clinicians. And as I said, like previously, the coronavirus, I showed you the data is sketchy, but here is an example where they are identifying the molecule and they're trying to find the treatments there and drug discovery patterns using supercomputers. That's where we need to be for the future. And the question still remains, can AI save lives? That's still an unanswered question for us in healthcare. But one of my favorite people, Gene Kranz, he has said, like, failure is not an option. I feel very strongly that we can't afford to fail because we can't afford to fail ourselves. So thank you very much. Giving you a 30,000 feet overview of AI in healthcare in probably 15 minutes or less. I'm going to give it to Dr. Frank Papay, who's going to talk about like the surgical application. The whole idea is we want to give you a snapshot of what healthcare and big data and AI looks like for us in healthcare. So thank you.
Piyush, that was excellent. Thank you so much. And just to be clear, was your colleague on the horse or was he in the upper right-hand corner?
Well, my colleague, they think he's the one on the horse, but he's on the upper right-hand corner. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and have Dr. Frank Papay go ahead with his presentation.
All right, I am sorry, gentlemen. I just got out of a meeting. Let me tee myself up here. Okay.
Yeah, I think we have been very busy with the whole COVID virus, and Dr. Frank Papay being the chairman, he's at the forefront of this.
Do this. Okay. Can you see my screen yet? No.
I see an empty PowerPoint.
Good. Getting there?
We're getting closer.
Good. How's that?
Perfect.
Great. So yeah, my name is Dr. Frank Papay. I'm one of the chairman of one of the institutes at the Cleveland Clinic, and certainly this COVID-19 scare has really prevented me. Actually, I was supposed to give a talk on this in Croatia. That was canceled a month ago, and then in China that was canceled, and in Taipei. So I've moved around the world virtually, but never been able to give this in person. And then we were at the AI Med course. What was that, Piyush? Probably, I would want to say sometime late last year. But
yeah,
what I want to talk,
year.
yeah, I want to talk in the next 10 minutes is really where I think it can help revolutionize surgery. And obviously, these are one of the top technologies that are really changing the face of healthcare. And you heard what Dr. Mathur just said. I think in surgery, it's a little bit different. In surgery, we want really, we're much more simplified than those advanced intensive care surgeons and physicians. And we have to know what to cut and what not to cut. We have to know what's going on at our patient in real time. So to simplify that, we need decision-making at all time. And certainly utilizing augmented reality and utilizing AI on top of that for decision-making based on image recognition is the direction to go. We've worked with Sebastian Thrun's lab out of Stanford to really look at least skin lesions like melanoma. And we're currently partnering with them to utilize their next strategies and how they're going to change their algorithms, be a little bit more sensitive and specific to certain types of melanoma. So that really basically comes down to, utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning for image recognition. But I think, as said before, this can go on to a lot of different things currently in drug design, biochemical analysis, and diagnostic systems, and how we can utilize that even in real-time pathology, much as what has been done years ago in really staining tissues, but now with confocal microscopy, in addition to real-time registration and surgical guidance, these all can be combined together into one. Well, I'm really preaching to the choir for everybody to really talk about really what AI, machine learning, and deep learning is, but really how does that apply into the surgery? And really that's really mostly cancer and personalized medicine. In particular, tailored surgery and tailored treatment and tailored really lighting up areas again by the surgeon and knowing what to cut and what not to cut and really to perform what we call the black box of the OR, to know in real time what's going on at all times, and to utilizing decision making that maybe the surgeon may not be aware of, but be highlighted by certain alarms in the vision of the surgeon. So again, I think what we need intraoperatively is better predictive decision making in real time. So again, as we talked about intraoperatively, how can we, by seeing what we're doing, prognostically give the patient some type of differentiation in what may happen after surgery and in surgery, to really limit the treatment response that we would do both preoperatively and intraoperatively, tailor that particular surgery in postoperative therapy depending on what we find in surgery, and then really deliver a risk profile for that patient. So again, this comes down to personalized precision therapies. And I think what's happening now is there are really 68 programs going on now through FDA trials to develop molecular probes. And those probes become really tags to different tissue types, both abnormal tissue types such as different types of cancers, and normal tissue types such as nerves, blood vessels, and whatever. But how that can be utilized for diagnostics and surgical guidance, and with that in combination with image recognition and augmenting that image recognition, we can improve intraoperative decision making. And then in addition to that, tag on targeted therapeutics at the time of surgery. So in the old days, it used to be you'd had to see a surgeon, had to make some type of radiologic diagnosis that wasn't accurate. You had to prove that through the biopsy, then you had to ablate the particular surgery, and then identify that through a pathology sectioning, and then from there design your therapy postoperatively if the patient needed some type of chemotherapy. All this is going to be like an accordion squished down into the time zone and make that into really one real-time surgical approach to the patient, from diagnosis to treatment, and then immediately. So again, this comes down also to how AI can deliver population health versus precision medicine. And what the difference is really that specificity based on the genetic factors of different tumor types and the genetic factor and phenotype of the particular patient. Here's an example of such. This is an example how we can really assess the disease-free interval for those patients that have hepatic carcinoma after radiofrequency ablation. And again, this, I can list hundreds of different articles about that. In addition to that, I think we're looking at personalized precision surgery, as I said before, tagged into augmented reality. And this is a project that we're working on in conjunction with University of Akron, University of Iowa, Cleveland Clinic, and Stanford, where the surgeon, again, as I said before, has limited senses. We want to augment those senses and augment decision-making, and also onlay preoperative planning on top of that for the surgeon. So no matter whether that's going to be a robot in the future or the surgeon itself, it really comes down to the surgeon's going to be the medical legal the line stops here, the buck stops here. And so he's going to have to be responsible for these strategies and these algorithms and these sensitivities, specificities, because again, he will be the legally responsible agent for that. So as I said before, there's this heuristic approach to image analysis, where the macro is looking at the environment, the anatomy, the radiomics, the tumor target, the peri-tumor, what's going around the tumor that can really give hints to what the tumor actually is and to the prognosis of that tumor. As I said before, the 68 programs that are looking at different types of intraoperative tumor tags. And then how do you navigate utilizing augmented reality and image recognition through the tissues in real-time registration. And then after you excise that, then certainly there's looking at it in a micro view, which is looking at the histology, the pathomics, and the peri-tumor pathomics. There's a program now out of Toronto, and it's a colon rectal surgeon in addition to the University of Toronto MI group that are looking at the black box of the OR. So we know what the black box of the airplane is if something goes wrong, it's already being recorded in real time. And then if anything happens, that can be downloaded and analyzed to find out exactly what was the happenstance or the problems or the poor decision-making that was performed during that flight. Well, that can also relate into the operating room. And again, this is nothing new. This happened way back in the early part of the 19th century by a surgeon named Frederick Mohs, where he did real-time staining of tissue, and actually just in a piecemeal way would take the tissue out till the tissue was clear. But now with, again, different types of image recognition, I think we can really have intraoperative margin control of the tumors itself and tag that with image target guided surgery and segmentation of the visualization of those tumors. And again, combine that together with intraoperative surgical guidance. We are also looking at this optical imaging for cancers based on the light frequency that is filtered from what is reflected and activated onto these tumors. It has some limitations by the scattered of the light. And again, utilizing different strategies and algorithms, the computer can really filter that even more and augment that with different types of tumor markers, as you can see here on this one particular patient's brain here that had a glioblastoma. Well, I think I'm just about out of my time, but I think the biggest thing for us is really the computer vision as compared to the human vision, and how we can use artificial neural networks to really augment the computer visions for the robot, how we can utilize that to really perform better decision-making by the human, and again, increase the capability of the surgeon. Here's one example, again, looking what we did in this particular rabbit experiment that we published, combining all the different types of CAT scans, PET scans, MRI, and really locking them together with certain algorithms so everything stays in relationship to each other. Again, and how we can utilize that to accurately, based on spectroscopy, pick up what's tumor and what's not tumor. And again, here's another example utilizing AI to really augment what is a more positive possible polyp that could be cancer, and what are the margins of that. So it's endless based on image recognition. Again, we're really scratching the surface right now, but I think it will probably augment surgeons, I would say, in the next 1 or 2 years. Again, we have a spinoff of the Cleveland Clinic that we're looking at right now. We'll probably have a product that will come out within the next 2 years that surgeons will have a wearable device. And again, this will be attached to a wearable computer that will have certain algorithms on it and to drive the analysis of this and augment the surgeon's capability of perioperative decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. That is terrific. And for folks that are online, the BrainX speakers will be available for questions, as I understand it, from Dr. Mather at the end. So please stick around. And yeah, that was terrific. That was awesome. Thank you. Who is up next?
It's going to be Dr. Kamal Maheshwari, and he's going to talk about applications, again, in the operating room for AI, some of the amazing work that he's been doing. He's an anesthesiologist, and he's the director for Center for Perioperative Intelligence at Cleveland Clinic. Does some amazing work in looking at all the blood pressure variables and making predictions.
All right, I'm trying to get to my slides. You guys can see the slides. Okay, thanks again. And I'm Kamal Maheshwari. I'm an anesthesiologist, as Piyush mentioned, and part of this group. And I'm going to talk specifically about few of the application of algorithms in the clinical management, especially for the patient who had surgery before and after. So as the technologist, which is the data scientist, and we as clinicians, we definitely speak different language, but the problem solving which we go through, or the mechanism you solve the problem, how you think through it is pretty much the same. And the problem here is that a lot of money in US healthcare is known to be wasted. And if you think about that, okay, if you want to decrease this wastage, what you can do, then avoidable complications becomes a big key target. Avoidable complications is the things that which nobody wants. It happens as a part of a routine medical care, and there are certain things which you can do to avoid it. And that's what we're trying to figure it out. And the complications which happen after surgery is a third leading cause of death. This is the most recent estimate, which is published in Lancet, which is a leading medical journal. So as anesthesiologists, we thought that, okay, if we can decrease the complications, probably we can help the whole US healthcare system. So the whole idea is that you empower clinicians to prevent complications. So that's how technology is going to help. And the questions which comes to us is mostly that I see a patient who's coming for example, hip surgery. And the question which I'm asking myself is that, is this patient at high risk for complication or mortality? What can I do to prevent it? If the complication is happening, can I detect it as soon as possible and then give appropriate treatment? Now, all these decision making right now is happening by some evidence, a lot of experience, but there's not consistency among different people. And that's why the variability, and that's why the term avoidable complications. So Donald Rumsfeld actually said, I mean, you can disagree with his policies, but few things which he said is right, that we deal with in complex decision making. Some of the things which we know, some of the things which we know that we don't know, and there are unknown unknowns. And it's too bad the medicine, even if it is advanced, there's a lot of things, a lot of decision falls into this known unknown and unknown unknown category. And that's what data, algorithms, AI can help bring to light. So artificial intelligence, as we talked about, yes, it can help healthcare, but the path is not known yet. And there's already concerns regarding patient privacy, the biases and limitation of algorithms, especially for different populations. And even if you make a fancy algorithm that you're doing some predictions, then does it actually improve patient outcomes or reduce complications? I mean, that exactly is not known. So everything is kind of pretty much bench at this point of time. So when you start looking into, okay, I want to reduce complication as an anesthesiologist, and what can I do? So the first thing which comes along with that I need a complete data set. So I'm in charge of a registry of anesthesia at Cleveland Clinic. We have more than 1 million patient in data set, but I would argue that I have less than 5% of the data which I need actually to make better decisions. So the information is not getting stored yet. The contextual information is another important thing, which is that a lot of information which as a physician or healthcare worker, which we see it, we know the context, and when we make decisions, we utilize that, and that doesn't get documented. So that information is not there in data sets. The patient populations, Cleveland Clinic has a certain patient population which may not be same as the patients who's going to Metro. So how do you account for that in different populations? And even if you make the best of predictions or algorithms, to be used. When you actually place it into the clinical scenario, how they get used, what they do to the clinical care, and that is not known. And that's why we have to build in some continuous learning. So that's why, given what we know, this whole work is in infancy. That's why we call this perioperative, means that in and around the surgery, before the surgery, during the surgery, after the surgery, which is 60% of any hospital business is around surgeries or procedures. And artificial intelligence application in that field is perioperative. The information which is generated is, you see in the monitors, and we as clinicians make decisions just on the fly, but at the same time, how do you code those decisions ultimately to make a better decision-making tools? Those are the work that needs to be done. That's why, from grand scheme point of view, we think that any person who's trying to deal with healthcare algorithms, they have to do either one of three tasks. One is that it has to identify at-risk patients, which is our primary objective. Who's at risk? Even in this COVID scenario, the basic question is, who is at risk? And that needs to be known in each and every setting. The second is early detection of complications or deviation from the care. That is the second component. And third is timely and effective treatment. So if you're not putting or building algorithms or products in these lines, you are missing out on something. From the technology point of view, there's three ways the technology needs to keep pace, and there's some work is going on in that direction. One is information. So we know that we have electronic health records, and we have some pathology, radiology, and all this picture information. When we have published evidence, like bunch of literature. But more data is coming. The real-time information which is coming from different areas, that has to come. Then making sense of information where the algorithms or machine learning AI will work. And then ultimately what you learned and you put into the clinical practice has to go into a point of care decision support systems. As a software, you have to build specific hardwares. Under Cures Act, software as a medical device is approved, and people are trying to get approvals for these to build software as a medical device. So all in all, it is a complex field, a lot of opportunity, and a lot of work needs to be done. At the basic, I'm going to talk about quickly 3 algorithms which we help work, develop, study, and did randomized trial and going towards FDA approval. And these are based on simple procedures, blood pressure and blood volume, which is a very common thing, which everybody knows, but even these things are too complicated right now. So the whole idea of any algorithm is going to go into in some kind of management solution. Which patient, when, how, and you have to tag along what approved. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to talk about the algorithms. So the first one is outcome prediction. This is the most common application which you have seen in healthcare. All the big companies are trying to delve into it, and they're predicting in hospital mortality, 30-day mortality, 1-year mortality, and stuff like that. And these are all different models. But one of the models which we developed with the help of Health Data Analytic Institute, you would see their performance is kind of best in class at this point of time. And I think that's the reason that we were, our collaboration has been chosen for the top 25 in CMS AI Challenge. So that's one, that you predict outcomes. This is in collaboration. This is definitely is using all CMS data, billions of patient encounters, and heavy technology we help guide, and the technology partners help provide the technology. The second one is hypotension prediction index. So blood pressure, whenever the blood pressure go low, that's hypotension, and that is harmful for the patient, and which is during the surgery, after the surgery, and we all want to know when it will gonna go down so that we can treat it. And so that is not known right now. And so that is the prediction component which we are talking about. So this is in collaboration with Edward Life Sciences. They made this hypertension prediction index using machine learning. And in a way, we are able to predict hypertension 5 to 15 minutes ahead of time so that we can treat it. So this is one useful format that we can use, one useful application. This algorithm has went through 3 clinical trials, which were led by us in Cleveland Clinic, and is FDA approved now to be utilized in the monitor. So it has, so single algorithm, it took the whole thing, but now it is part of the monitors and FDA approved. So, but still, continuous learning component is not there, and definitely we can improve this algorithm going forward. And what we need to see is that how does it work? What do we learn from this thing when it goes in there? Another algorithm is again a machine learning based algorithm, was developed in collaboration. Edward Life Sciences, again, that is my primary research partner. And this helps you give you, you always see patients have IV bags. Everybody gets that IV bag, and how much to give, when to give, that is not currently known well. So a machine is telling exactly when to give and how much to give. So that's this algorithm at its heart is. And we just finished a large trial on this thing, and is going to get FDA approval. We are in the final stages for doing that, and it's going to. So this is way it can standardize how you give fluid to maintain good care for all patients. So all in all, in the interest of time, I'm going to just leave it there. There's one thing which I would leave before we go, that we know that there's a lot of application of prediction and AI will be happening, but eventually we need to know who is our primary customer, if you will be. Is it you are helping a patient, you are helping a physician to, or you're helping a hospital to make better decisions? That's what the question comes out to be. And what is the need in each component? What is the knowledge gap or opportunity? And what all these algorithms are trying to do is building a decision support system, and how that gets incorporated in clinical practice is important. And lastly, doing all this, you eventually have to show the value, the millions of dollars which get spent, how you are saving. Are you reducing complication, mortality, or you are actually saving money, actual cash dollar at the hospital level? That needs to be known. So I will leave it at there, and we'll happy to answer any question at the end.
That is great stuff. Thank you. Yeah, claps, claps, claps. I see the claps online. That's great stuff. Thank you.
So the next speaker, Doug, is Dr. Jacek Cywinski. He is also an anesthesiologist, my colleague at Cleveland Clinic, and part of a team BrainX. He's also the quality improvement officer for anesthesiology, that is general anesthesia, which is one of the departments that we have. And he's going to talk about where Kamal and I think Dr. Papay and I left off. How do we measure quality? So we have all these streams of data that are coming in. How do we measure quality and performance and build a case for value? How do we do that with all the data that we have? That's what he's going to talk about.
Just trying, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just trying to share my screen, but it doesn't allow me for whatever reason. Sure.
I just made you a co-host.
Okay. Let me just do this. Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, and we can see your screen too.
Oh, you can see? Okay. How about now?
Looks good.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep, I can see that.
Thank you so much. So I'm an anesthesiologist and I'm a quality review officer at the Department of General Anesthesiology. And my talk, it's not going to be technical at all. It's more of the presenting the concept. And the concept is the quality improvement in the healthcare and how we can use AI to improve what we do poorly. And one thing what we know is that the variation in the healthcare practices is one of the biggest impediment to deliver quality of care. And that was discovered in 2001 and published in the seminal paper by Institute of Medicine, and identified variation in the healthcare as one of the biggest problems we have to deal. And variation leads to medical errors, to omissions, and as Dr. Maheshwari mentioned, actually medical errors are the third leading cause of mortality in the United States. But leaving alone mortality, even more patients are affected by not getting evidence-based treatment, by receiving ineffective therapy, or being exposed to unnecessary tests. And all of this leads to great deal of inefficiencies and enormous cost of the healthcare in the United States. And at the source of these problems, we can see that lack of information or lack of the right information at the right time may be really the root cause of the problem. And right now, in the era of electronic health record, actually the information might be there, but our inability as a human being to process all this information in a reasonable time frame and put together all the important parts is the biggest impediment. And electronic health records, and that's what Dr. Mathur showed, blossomed tremendously over the past decade. And right now, almost every healthcare system is using electronic medical records. And on one hand, it's a great opportunity for us because it's the repository of all information we have about the patient. However, it also a great impediment because it doesn't allow us as a human beings to get all the information in a reasonable time frame and put all information together into actionable action. Now, so to deal with the variation in the healthcare and trying to bring the data and the evidence into the system in a perioperative period, enhanced recovery after surgery pathways were developed at the beginning of the 21st century. And essentially it was very systematic approach to standardize the way we treat the patient. And it was 5 steps where we would identify the problem and adopt best practices which were based on evidence, identify the high impact interventions, implement, and then the monitor compliance to those recommendations. And since the beginning of the ERAS protocols, which stand for Enhanced Recovery After Surgery, almost every surgical procedure had developed the protocols, the pathways, how should we treat the patients undergoing this specific procedure. However, the problem, even now, we deal with is the poor implementation. And even though the pathways are very well defined, we still have very poor compliance. We still don't know for most of the intervention whether there is a good supporting evidence to show the benefit of these interventions. There is some human factors which we don't understand really well, but we know that for some reasons providers don't adhere to those protocols. And in order to look into our own population at the Cleveland Clinic, under leadership of Dr. Maheshwari and Mathur, we partnered with the company called IASD, and we used the software they developed, which is called Clinical Variation Management. And essentially, we looked at 1,800 of patients undergoing colorectal surgery, which all of them, we followed in the treatment ERAS protocol, just to look how we're doing, whether we truly implement all the interventions which those patients supposed to get in a perioperative period, and whether this seemingly homogeneous patient population is really that homogeneous. So this clinical variation management software supposed to help us to discover patterns in a clinical data set. It's supposed to help us to identify best practices and build the care paths which are tailored to the individual patient or the patient groups, and continuously improve the care paths based on the new data from the patient records. So we approached this process into 5 steps. So first, we collected all data we could put our hands on. Then we used machine learning to identify desired pathways. And then we went with the content experts through clinical appraisal, making sure that the factors which affect outcomes make clinical sense. And finally, the software was able to use artificial intelligence to provide near real-time prognostication of the risk and provide a compliance report. So in supervised discoveries, we decided that the most favorable outcomes will be the patient who have lower direct hospital cost, lower length of hospital stay, lower 30-day readmission rate. And based on differences between well-performing groups and groups with suboptimal outcomes, we were able to identify the differences and see whether we can act to correct those differences and change the trajectories of the outcomes of the individual groups. And also, it was very important that we also evaluate those drivers of the outcomes, either bad or good outcome, through the lens of the clinical knowledge, making sure that all of these interventions and factors which affect outcomes make clinical sense. But this was just one of the example of the representation of the data of all the patients we analyzed. So as you can see in this 3D scatter plot, the patients are clustered based on length of the hospital stay, which was one of our outcome measure, and also based on the clinical similarities. So even though initially we started with one surgical population, you can see that within this population, there are multiple distinctive clusters, which identifies the patient who had different clinical makeup. And as you can see, those 2 particular groups did the best in terms of the clinical outcome by essentially having the shortest hospital stay. So based on this grouping, we were able to take a deeper dive into individual group, and this is just a screenshot of the software, and look at each individual group and individual patients to identify each clinical interventions patients received throughout the hospital journey. And then software automatically calculated statistical significance, if you will, and identified the differences between each individual group. So that helped us to build the pathways, because we identify that groups which had favorable, for instance, length of hospital stay and lowest cost were receiving consistently ketorolac, which is one of the pain medication, were managed with the restrictive fluid strategy, and had surgery for cancer. So those findings were not necessarily particularly novel. However, that confirmed that truly what the software identified automatically made clinical sense. And the readmissions were not surprisingly associated with liver fluid management and some comorbidities such as diabetes. So essentially, this whole project was a proof of concept and showed us that within what we think is uniform population, actually there are some subpopulation and unified approach to all patients doing exactly the same thing may not really be the best. And with machine learning, we're able to identify the paths which are tailored for individual patient based on comorbidities and other metrics. And this process can be done essentially automatically and free up clinicians from actually trying to do and sift through the data manually. So in essence, what this project showed that using machine learning and artificial intelligence, we can modify the pathway from this single track approach that we try to squeeze every patient through the same channels of the treatment to make it more personalized and also achieve desired outcomes. So what did we learn with this project? Well, we learned that with the enough good quality data and using machine learning techniques, we can identify subgroups and differentiating factors which can help us to tailor better treatment plan for the patient. We're able to quickly select the best performing group and identify the factors which had the highest impact on the outcomes. We were able to identify variability, which is a driver essentially of the poor outcomes in medicine. And also, which is very interesting, we're able to use dynamic data analytics to fine-tune the risk prognostication and also to fine-tune the clinical pathways. And also the software allowed us to provide new real-time compliance feedback to the providers to make sure that all interventions which were supposed to occur during the management of the patient actually did occur. So I think this is my last slide. Thank you very much.
Awesome, great stuff. Thank you.
So Doug, this is Piyush here. On behalf of the team, I hope you got like a high-level overview of some of the challenges that we're dealing with the whole healthcare data. And that's where we need a lot of support from different groups. We are always happy to work with different engineering groups or data scientists to find solutions to our problems, but we're open to questions about our presentation or more.
Good stuff. I think for questions, could folks either put them into the chat or maybe do the hand raise? Either way you want to go. Oh, okay. I see. Is that? Am I miss? No, I think I was misinterpreting it. I thought I saw Mike had his hand up. Anybody else have any questions? Surely there must be some questions. Oh, okay, go for it. Shruti?
Hi, thank you so much. It was really, really interesting. So I'm a junior at Hathaway Brown School, which is a high school in the Cleveland area, and I'm really interested in healthcare and artificial intelligence, its applications to it. So one of my questions is, after you've created technologies that can, like gone through that process and created technologies that surgeons or other doctors can use, what are steps that we can take even from the beginning to try to get hospital systems or doctors more familiar with these practices and eventually have them integrated into systems?
Yeah, this is again, Dr. Mathis. I'm gonna put my opinion on that. That's a great question, and I think you're thinking ahead, so that's very smart. Because what happens is I've gone to a lot of these meetings and conferences where people present certain solutions, and a lot of us on the physician side are scratching our heads and wondering, like, okay, what do I do with this? So I think engaging physicians from the very beginning is always helpful, so they can look at what you're trying to build and give you feedback on how this can be implemented. But where you will also need to engage them, and that's what Dr. Maheshwari and Dr. Cywinski were also showcasing, is you will have to validate whatever you developed. In medicine, there is nothing that gets deployed without getting validated through clinical trials or research and ensuring that it's not going to be harmful or rather is going to be helpful to our patients. So engaging clinician groups early on, especially those who understand what you're developing or have some understanding of the machine learning or AI, and working with them through the different challenges of validation and implementation. And implementation is a completely different ballgame, which has to go through the healthcare IT groups, and Doug has been part of those challenges, so they can help navigate that space for you. That's my 2 cents.
Well,
thank you so much.
This is Jacek Cywinski. So I think the most important part is just, if you want to bring those solutions to the real world, it has to be some value proposition. It has some catch in terms of, it has to prove that it can do something better than what we do right now. And without that, I think all of this kind of discussions and systems are kind of moot, because unless you show that it improves something, it provides better health, or provides advantage to the providers, it will be very difficult to push any of the solution into the real world. So that's what Dr. Mathur said, that yes, I mean, we can talk about all the solutions at the conference, present how good they are, but really the true test of the value is in a real world clinical applications. And in order to get traction, you really need to show that the solution is bringing value, whatever that might be.
Okay, thank you so much.
Next hand up, I believe was Jason. Jason Mancuso. Hey, Jason, we can't hear you.
Oh, no?
No, you're really faint.
All right, I'll try to fix it. Maybe put it back around. Thanks.
you want to try typing it out in the chat?
Sure.
In the meantime, Doug, you have Jingli, who's.
Oh yeah, actually, Helen had typed one out a few minutes ago. Can you describe your data science team, the structure and platforms they use to create and push these machine learning models into production?
Yeah, so myself and Dr. Maheshwari, to quite an extent, we are both trained in have the basic training in machine learning and programming, and of course, Dr. Papay and Dr. Cywinski and Dr. Khanna, they have great understanding in this space. What we have, how we have approached this is not necessarily try to build our own machine learning group over here, because we recognize that for different projects, we need to leverage groups or teams who have the capacity and the skills to work with. So to give you an example, when I look at the horizon, not everybody is an expert in image analysis or using convolutional neural networks. The same way, there are groups and teams which are very good at NLP, but they may not be good at image analysis and things. So what we have done is for specific projects, we have tried to reach out and connect with the different experts in those different areas and driven our projects through that approach. And that's why if you see the Pechuum one or the one that Dr. Maheshwari has been working on with Edward Life Sciences, they have an amazing team of data scientists and machine learning experts. And same thing that Dr. Cywinski showcased, the ISD group. So we have been working with these different groups. At the end of the day, it has to be a collaborative approach. I don't think we as a group can build our own machine learning, and that's not what we are looking to do either ways. It's best to, in our approach, to collaborate with the people who know best how to help us in different areas. Just like it's similar to healthcare, where the cardiologist is best at heart disease, and the oncologist who's a cancer doctor is best at cancer doctor. And then there are some journalists also. We just seek out the experts and we work with them. And I think there's a question about ML platforms. So again, they all have been different based on the needs.
I'll just comment one.
Yes.
So I just want to comment on this with regards to what is our technical capabilities. So like any drug development or device development, we think that algorithm or AI development will be collaborative. And we as a physician will provide the problems to be solved, how it can be solved the best. We'll do use case analysis, we do clinical trials and to make it happen, just like drug and devices. So the collaborative model has to happen because the quality of engineering powers which are needed. For example, the project which I said was on top 25 of Medicare CMS AI challenge. They are using all Medicare data using parallel computing. There's 10 engineers sitting there, and you cannot, mimic that in-house within our team. So with regard to our research team, we do have around 10 data scientists and statisticians, and predominantly they are using SAS. So that's what I would say. Thanks.
I think one of the biggest strengths of our team, that is BrainX, is that we are bilingual or multilingual. So we do understand all aspects of data science and machine learning very well, which sometimes is hard for other physicians or physician groups.
Good stuff. So the Jing Li, I believe you had your hand up next.
Okay, hi. This is Jing Li from Case Western Reserve University, Computer and Data Sciences. Excellent talk. Really enjoyed that. So I just have one comment. within CASE, we have quite a few faculty members working in the area of bioinformatics, including myself, mainly genomic data and integrative analysis, and mostly in collaboration with the researchers in Cleveland medical systems. But we are also very much interested in the health, AI, and the systems development areas you guys actually talked about. And we actually have a lot of students in the AI machine learning track in our programs. I think if you are open to collaborations, there are abundant of opportunities for our students working together with you guys. Just a comment.
We actually would welcome that, and that's the approach we have taken. So we have been working with, you probably know Anant Matabushi's
Yes.
lab.
Yes.
We have had them come and present at BrainX community multiple times, and
okay.
there are multiple groups there. So again, we can connect offline.
Sure.
You can have my email, and we would love to have that collaboration. If you see, my entire talk was about collaboration, so we would love to partner.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I will follow up with you.
Thank you.
We had a question from Herb on, are you doing any NLP on knowledge extraction from research papers?
So I'm just going to say that we just finished one of the NLP projects, and we're going to publish that soon. I think that is of great interest to our team, and maybe Dr. Maheshwari can briefly talk about it, because he has been trying to get a project up and running in that area.
So yeah, I mean, NLP will be a key technology going forward. The reason I say is unlocking the power of EHR, electronic health record, which has a lot of unstructured, or predominantly unstructured data into the text, that NLP or other technologies needs to be there. And there's nothing much going on. I was talking to Amazon Comprehend medical team. They have NLP engine. Google have developed a little bit. Actually, IBM is saying that they have an NLP based engine for healthcare data. But if you actually look into the products or use in clinical practice, that is very limited. Some of the uses are being there in the insurance industry, which at the back end, they are sifting through, all the patient data, structured or unstructured, and trying to make some sense out of it. But in actual healthcare, we have been limited. I personally think it will change how the research is done. And I have one project, and I'm looking for an NLP partner for quite some time. The only problem is we cannot clean or remove PHI from the text data. So all the work we've been asked to do within Cleveland Clinic firewalls. And that has become an issue of data sharing, because if you cannot share the text, or you cannot promise removing protected health information from the text data, you cannot send it out, and where all the expertise to analyze is there. And that is a conundrum. We are trying to solve it. I'm getting closer and closer, and hopefully one day we'll do it.
Yeah, I think as Kamal was saying, we have been looking at all the newer and evolving techniques, including BERT and LBERT and all the transformers, and also that is something that is of great interest to us. And I think it's a challenge, because we don't have a good data set to train some of these models on, which are being used by Google and Microsoft and some of these other groups who are using like social media data sets or their own data sets. That's been a big challenge for healthcare.
let's see. I think we might be, I think we might be out of questions. Again, I just want to thank the speakers. Thank you for Confluent for supplying the Zoom. And oh wait, we had one last question coming in from John. What would be an appropriate expectation on your analytics team to help close the gap in understanding between the technical and medical fields? That's a simple one.
I think from what I've learned, a lot of work goes on into cleaning and pre-processing the data. And Doug, you know this very well. That's a huge challenge for us. The big focus for us also is creating good models. How do you create good models that will help us in healthcare? Rest in terms of what the problem is and how do we implement it. A lot of those solutions we can help with as clinicians. Of course, I'm not talking about the IT integration and implementation side. I'm talking about just clinical implementation side. But I think that's where we need biggest amount of help. Like, how do we pre-process this data very well? And how do we create novel models? A lot of these prediction models that you're seeing that are being thrown out there are not necessarily novel, in my opinion. They're like logistic regression models. There are some of these simple random forest models. Somebody takes the housing data prediction model, puts healthcare variables, and creates a prediction model that has a poor precision and recall, or is hard to implement. I think those are the challenges that we deal with every single day, both on the data side and then on the modeling side. And that's a little bit unique and different for healthcare because we don't have good pre-trained models that are available for various different other areas. So that's one of the challenges for us.
Oops. So thank you. And I think that's, I think that'll do it. I don't see any more questions. And again, thank you to the speakers. Thank you, Piyush, for organizing all the BrainX folks. Thanks, Derek. And again, also thanks everybody for not letting the meetup die, in spite of a worldwide pandemic. Just hopefully
Please stay safe.
Everybody stay safe. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you, Doug, as well. Thank you, BrainX team.
Thank you.